Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. We're here because the news is being distorted. We're here because people are being inundated with misinformation on social media. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup. This is the raw, naked truth. A curfew for Los Angeles, a framework for a U.S. China trade deal, GM invests billions in American manufacturing, and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and here's the news you need to know. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass implemented a mandatory curfew in certain areas of the city from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. local time, which is expected to remain in place for several days. The curfew comes 5 days after Democratic leaders continued to declare the protests across Los Angeles were peaceful, despite images being broadcast around the world showing cars getting torched and law enforcement officials getting assaulted. I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere and has caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties, Bass said on Tuesday night. So my message to you is, if you do not live or work in downtown LA, avoid the area. Law enforcement will arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted. Bass told reporters a curfew had been considered for several days, but after 23 businesses were looted and destroyed on Monday night, the mayor decided to implement the curfew. Russia launched one of its largest air assaults yet, firing 315 drones and 7 missiles over a 5-hour barrage across Ukraine, killing at least 8 and injuring dozens more. Ukraine's Air Force said it downed the majority of drones, but strikes still hit civilian infrastructure in Kiev, Odessa, and other cities. In Odessa, a maternity hospital and emergency center were among the targets. President Zelensky condemned the attack and called for action from America and stronger pressure from Europe and global allies. The strikes followed a recent round of prisoner exchanges between Russia and Ukraine after talks in Turkey. The U.S. and China agreed to a framework for reducing trade tensions. After 2 days of intense trade talks in London, the U.S. and China have agreed to a preliminary plan to implement the trade truce they reached last month in Geneva, which each side had accused the other of violating. The two largest economies in the world have reached a handshake for a framework, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said, noting that President Trump and China's President Xi Jinping must both still sign off on the agreement. Details of the deal were not immediately released, but two main sticking points going into the talks were China's withholding of rare earth minerals and U.S. controls on tech exports to China. A federal appeals court on Tuesday granted the Trump administration's request to keep the president's far-reaching tariffs in effect for now, but agreed to fast-track its consideration of the case this summer. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit extended its earlier temporary pause of a trade court decision that found Trump exceeded his powers in imposing the tariffs. The appeals court said it intends to hear arguments on July 31st, which means the tariffs likely will remain in effect for at least the next 2 months. All of the court's active judges will participate in the case. The losing party is expected to seek review at the Supreme Court. U.S. authorities said Monday that they had arrested a Chinese researcher accused of smuggling biological material into the country, the second such case in days. The FBI said in a criminal complaint that the researcher, identified as Cheng Juan Han, a Chinese doctoral student at the College of Life Sciences and Technology at the Huazhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, was arrested Sunday at the airport in Detroit. According to the complaint, since September, Han has sent 4 shipments from China containing concealed biological material to staff members at a laboratory at the University of Michigan, where she planned to spend a year completing a project. Officials said Han made false statements about the shipments when federal agents questioned her about them when she arrived in the United States from Shanghai. 2 Chinese nationals were charged last week after the FBI said it had been determined that one tried to smuggle a toxic fungus into the United States, also for research at the University of Michigan, it alleged. One, a researcher at the university, was arrested and remains in custody, while the other was denied entry to the United States last year and remains at large. President Donald Trump paid a visit to Fort Bragg Tuesday to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. In his speech, Trump promised to restore the names of every military base named after a Confederate soldier. The president also spoke at length about Los Angeles for a period, including the feud going on between him and California Governor Gavin Newsom. President Trump said while he is commander-in-chief, he will restore law and order in Los Angeles at any cost, and reiterated that it is within his power to deploy military members. Trump flew in alongside U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll to join service members, veterans, military families, and community members to commemorate the occasion. Organizers said the ceremony was all about honoring past and present service members, and it incorporated live demonstrations showcasing the operational capabilities of today's military, as well as musical performances accompanied by remarks from senior military leaders. FBI Director Kash Patel praised his agents, as well as those from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, for taking down a major drug operation in Atlanta, resulting in the removal of 33 firearms and over 252 kilograms of drugs, valued at over $9 million from the streets. The FBI, alongside the DEA and state and local authorities, executed 3 search warrants last Thursday, resulting in the arrest of 47-year-old Bartholomew Keaton Harrelson. A federal grand jury returned an indictment charging Harrelson with 3 drug trafficking and weapon possessions crimes related to the drug trafficking operation. U.S. Attorney Theodore S. Hertzberg said Harrelson is charged with possession with intent to distribute controlled substances, possession on a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. If convicted, he faces at least 40 years in prison and the possibility of life behind bars. Elon Musk said Wednesday that he regrets making some of his recent social media posts attacking President Donald Trump, admitting they went too far. This comes after a recent public spat between the two as Musk began criticizing Trump for his big beautiful spending bill, after the billionaire tech executive spent months working to cut wasteful spending as part of the Department of Government Efficiency, which Musk has since departed. Numerous posts that Musk made have now been deleted. General Motors plans to invest $4 billion in 3 American assembly plants, including moving or increasing production of 2 Mexican-produced vehicles to U.S. plants. The Detroit automaker announced the plans Tuesday, as there have been few indications of progress in trade talks between the Trump administration and Mexican leaders. Earlier this year, President Trump implemented 25% tariffs on imported vehicles and 25% tariffs on many auto parts imported into the U.S. GM said the investment will add assembly of the gas-powered Chevrolet Blazer and Chevrolet Equinox that are currently produced in Mexico to 2 other plants in the U.S. and convert a large idled plant in Michigan, formerly expected to build all-electric trucks, to make gas-powered SUVs and trucks in 2027. GM declined to discuss the future of the Ramos Arizpe plant that currently produces the vehicles in Mexico. A source familiar with the plans said production of the Blazer will fully move to the U.S. from Mexico, while production of the Equinox is expected to be additive to the Mexican plant, which also will produce for other markets. That's the Raw Naked Truth. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth Daily News Brief, as well as our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, with news analysis and commentary, and the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.